What's up, my friends? Welcome into the PHOI Phillies podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on this disgusting, gloomy, cloudy, overcast, gray. We've been duped by fake spring. I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but welcome into the PHOI Phillies podcast, brought to you by Bet365, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary with our friends at Bet365. Yeah, I think we've been duped by fake spring because last week it was like 60, 65. It was windy, but it was nice, and it felt like it was getting closer and closer to baseball weather. And then I wake up this morning, and I am trying to figure out why I'm sitting in my car trying to warm up the heaters again, which I thought we were past that, but I guess this is just what March and April are. Hopefully, as we get closer and closer, 3 days away from opening day, hopefully the weather gets a little bit better for opening day. I know the home opener, there's a threat of rain, because of course there is, because we have a 6-hour tailgate that I hope you come hang out with us. We'll talk more about that later on the show. But there's, of course, a threat of rain on Monday. Maybe they'll push the game to Tuesday. We'll see. But this is the plight of Northeast baseball early in the season. And this is why I have been a proponent of starting the regular season in all the warm cities. And I know people don't like that because, when is opening day for your team if you play in the cold cities? At least it buys you a couple of days. Like, the game should be the season should start in Miami. It should start in all the Texas teams. It should start in LA for both LA teams and in San Diego. You can keep opening day out of Colorado and Minnesota and Boston and New York and sometimes Philly. But we'll get to that. I could go on a tangent on that because we've got actual tangible stuff to talk about here as the Phillies 26-man opening day roster appears to be set. Now, I don't know definitively if they're going to make a last-minute move over the next couple of days, but it appears that the 26-man roster is going to be set. The Phillies have announced today that Kody Clemens has made the team, therefore saying that Buddy Kennedy has not. They've also claimed Carlos Hernandez off of waivers from the Kansas City Royals. So we'll get into all of that, but let's start with the final bench spot. We talked a couple of weeks ago about who could take the final bench spot, and Kody Clemens was always an option. But my thought process was that they would maybe shy away from Kody Clemens and, in fact, maybe even look to trade Kody Clemens because of a fatal flaw that is not his fault at all. And that's the fact that he's a left-handed bat for a team that is very lefty-heavy and could probably have used some pop off the bench with a right-handed bat. And so Buddy Kennedy got into this conversation, even though I'll be quite frank with you, Kody Clemens is a better player than Buddy Kennedy is. I think most people would agree with that. I just think Kody Clemens is a more versatile player. I think he's a better hitter. I think he's been pretty clutch for this team in spots when they needed him to be. He's kind of been a buoy at times when Bryce Harper missed extended periods of time. I just think Kody Clemens is a better player than Buddy Kennedy is. But the reality was, numbers games sometimes dictate rosters just as much as talent level does, especially when it comes to bench pieces and things like that. So this is the right move. I'm just surprised that it was made. It's why when we talked about who could potentially take the spot that was left void by Weston Wilson, a lot of the guys that I brought up were right-handed hitters, both Buddy Kennedy internally and externally with a guy like Adam Duvall or somebody who may not make a roster and a player like Bobby Dahlbeck or Keston Hiura. Whatever the case may be, it felt like a right-handed bat was going to get this spot. Of the two, when it's just broken down to Kody Clemens or Buddy Kennedy, Kody Clemens is the better player. And this makes a ton of sense when you look at it from that perspective. Clemens also had a better spring than Buddy Kennedy did. Clemens slashed 308, 357, 500 in his 52 spring training at bats. He had 5 extra base hits. He had 2 home runs. He drove in 7. And if you go back to last year, he had 15 extra base hits and just over 110 at-bats with the Phillies with 18 RBIs. He also has positional versatility. He has the ability to play first, which we saw him do a lot when Bryce Harper was out. He can play second. He can play third. He could play probably both corner outfields, even though he only played left last year. Could play both corner outfields if needed. And I think that holds water for Rob Thompson, which you kind of see on his bench, right? You have a fourth outfielder in Johan Rojas, which makes sense. You always want to carry a fourth outfielder. And then the other two guys, not the backup catcher, but the other 2 guys on the bench have positional versatility. Weston Wilson will do the same thing, assuming that he will take a spot on the team once he's healthy, whenever that may be. But Kody Clemens and Edmundo Sosa both have the ability to play multiple positions. And I think that's something that Rob Thomson values. I think that's something that Dave Dombrowski values. And it's probably a portion of the reason as to why Kody Clemens is going to make the trip up north back to Philly, and Buddy Kennedy is probably going to find a job elsewhere. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Kody Clemens is like this world-class elite player, because I think he does get maybe a little overhyped by the fan base. I'm not sitting here saying that the fans think he should be an everyday player, but I do think he's had some clutch moments. He's delivered when he's been called upon, and I think that's maybe overinflated his value a little bit. Last year, he was 7 for 37 with runners in scoring position, and in the months that he got his most at-bats, into September and into the early portion of October prior to the playoffs, he hit 192. He was 10 for 52, and he struck out 14 times. But he is a solid bench piece, and so to me, this makes sense when bench depth is hard to come by. Buddy Kennedy, on the inverse, doesn't make the team. He's out of minor league options, and quite frankly, I think that there's not going to be a lot of need for Buddy Kennedy. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. He doesn't make the team. He's out of minor league options, which means the Phillies are going to have to either trade him or DFA him and pass him through waivers. He hit 162 in spring training and struck out 11 times in 37 at-bats. Now, he did have an OBP of 347 because he walked 10 times, but he wasn't hitting much in spring training, and I don't think there was a lot of upside to keeping him, especially considering Clemens had a good spring and has had a track record of success. So Mopar, for example, puts in the comments, when Kody's hot, he can become a problem. I think when Kody Clemens is having himself a week or a 10-day stretch or 2 weeks when he's seeing the baseball well, he's a very good hitter. But you saw it in September where the inverse is also true. When he's cold, and that's why he's a bench piece. And that's okay. That's what a bench piece is, right? It's a guy that you're looking for a spark off the bench. Maybe you have a righty in a spot that you don't particularly want, but a lefty comes up and Kody Clemens can be that guy. Kennedy is now going to be passed through waivers or attempted to pass through waivers or traded for. The conversation about him being the final bench piece really, to me, was strictly because he was a right-handed hitter. I mean, there wasn't a lot. He had the one really great game last year where he tied the game with a home run, or kept the game tied with a pretty dramatic play in the outfield, and then had a huge at bat late in the season or late in the game to help them. But to me, he's not a major league player right now, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I just don't think he's a major league player in this moment. I just think the realization is he's a right-handed hitter when the team was getting to be lefty heavy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So Dave Dombrowski said that there is interest in the trade market in Buddy Kennedy. And the team has drawn interest in Buddy Kennedy. Have they? Have they really? Or is that just GM speak trying to stir up conversation? What kind of interest is there in a right-handed bat who can play multiple positions but is an okay major league hitter? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. What would be the return if they do find a trade partner for Buddy Kennedy? You're talking about a low-level prospect, probably a young guy, or somebody that's not on a 40-man roster that you would flip for minor league depth, positional depth. You're talking about somebody outside of a top 30. It's not going to be a top prospect. Somebody maybe with team control, somebody that Dave Dombrowski could value as a project, somebody that they feel like could give them single A or double A depth. But the return is not going to be all that impressive. And the reason being is because he's a quad A player, in my opinion. And so do they get a trade done with another team who's looking for a last spot on their bench? Maybe. But I think the likelier scenario is that no trade manifests itself, and instead the Phillies try to pass him through waivers. Now, I think the more likely outcome, if a team wants Buddy Kennedy, is that they would try to claim him through waivers. And the reason being is they don't have to give up anything for him, right? They would just have to Buddy Kennedy would just have to make it to them in the waiver order claim process. And so I think the more likely scenario is the Phillies try to pass him through waivers, hope he gets through, and then he becomes organizational depth when he's off the 40-man roster. Maybe a team claims him. because of not having to give up anything. But I think there is a chance that Buddy Kennedy could be back in AAA in Lehigh Valley. That's also a scenario that could exist. The likeliest of the scenarios is maybe a team takes a shot at him once he gets to waivers. But I don't know what the generation of interest is going to be. He's a fine player, but I don't think he provides you anything on your bench except for the fact that he could play you multiple positions. So with that being said, Kody Clemens is going to make the team, and the Phillies are likely going to carry 13 positional players. 6 of them are left-handed hitters, and it's 7 if you include the switch-hitting Rafael Marchand, who will hit, obviously, lefty against right-handed pitching. There is a scenario in which Rafael Marchand gets a start on an off day for JT Realmuto against a righty, where the Phillies could feature 6 left-handed bats in their lineup, because it'll be Schwarber, Harper, Stott, and Kepler for sure. The likelihood is Marsh will be the center fielder in that scenario because it has been said that he's going to get a crack as the everyday center fielder. And then Marchand. Against the righty, that means you're going to have 6 left-handed hitters in your starting lineup, and you have 7 guys who can hit left-handed on your 13 positional player roster. Now, the 6 righties are Turner, Bohm, Castellanos, JT, Sosa, and Rojas. And that is your positional group of 13. That is why I'm surprised that the Phillies didn't look externally for a right-handed bat off the bench. I don't think it was ever going to be Buddy Kennedy, even though there was talk about it, even though we talked about it on this show. I don't think it was ever going to be Buddy Kennedy. I think that was just drumming up conversation to drum up conversation. But I think of the 2, this is the right move, but I am a little bit surprised that they did go with a lefty instead of looking externally for a right-handed bat. Maybe they did. Maybe they just didn't feel like the player that they were going to get on the waiver list, or a small trade that they were going to make was going to be worth it comp to what Kody Clemens did. Kody Clemens hit well enough against lefties in a small sample size last year to feel good against him, good for him with him against either side. Now he's going to see more at bats against righties than he is going to see against lefties, but he hit well enough against lefties last year that it's not necessarily going to be this, crazy problem. But I think the 13 set. I think that's what your bench is going to be. It's going to be Sosa, Marchand, Rojas, and Clemens is your bench at least until Weston Wilson is available to return. When is that? I don't know. Who knows? We haven't had an update on Wilson in quite some time. We'll see what happens. They'll probably slow play this as long as they possibly can, just to get a look at all 4 of those guys, specifically to get a look at what Kody Clemens is able to do as your bench bat, and then to see what Johan Rojas has the ability to do. Now, I'm not saying that they would put Weston Wilson in center field, but I do think there's going to be a shorter lead this year for Johan Rojas and for Brandon Marsh for that matter, because of one guy in particular who's starting his age 21 season in AAA, and that's Justin Crawford. I do think there's a very realistic chance that Justin Crawford might see Major League action this year. I don't think it's right away. I don't think it's going to be in April or May. It's probably closer to July or August. And in fact, if things are going well for the Phillies, it may not be till a September call-up. But I think that the lead for those 2 guys, Marsh and Rojas, is going to be smaller because of Justin Crawford waiting in the wings. They're not going to rush him up, but I do think that they view him as a integral piece of the future. And if those 2 guys struggle, there is a not so zero chance that Justin Crawford could see Major League action this year. And so I think the bench is going to be fluid this year. And I think the center field position is going to be fluid this year as well. It'll be Marsh to start. Rojas will get spells. Marsh will play some left and Rojas will play some center. But I think it's going to be a bulk of Kepler and Marsh. And, you'll wait to see what happens with Justin Crawford. But I think that the bench is going to be fluid, especially for that final spot. Wilson, Clemens, maybe Crawford at some point this year. I think that final spot's going to rotate quite a bit because of the fact that specifically with Clemens, he's out of minor league options as well. So another guy you would eventually have to pass through waivers. So it'll be an interesting dynamic, but for now, Kody Clemens has made the team. Buddy Kennedy is not. And we'll see what happens when Weston Wilson returns from injury. We'll talk about another guy who's looking like he's going to make the team in the bullpen in just a second. But first, let me tell you about some of our friends here at PHOI. And as I said, they are a presenting sponsor, but it's never ordinary with Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide, and they have been able to interact with Bet365 with 780,000 live streamed events each year. Bet365 pioneered live in-game betting, and when they have live in-game streams, it makes it easy for you to not just watch the game, but to bet on it while the game is happening. Lines change all the time. Odds change all the time, and live in-game betting is the way to go with Bet365. But I've been telling you about the early payout that they offer across the NBA and the NHL. So listen, sometimes your team jumps up big, and you want to not have to worry about a comeback from the other team. Well, if your team in the NHL is up by 3 goals at any point on your money line bet, you win. Just like that. They're going to cash you out, and you're going to win. You're not going to have to worry about a return, a comeback late in the third period or something like that. Same to be said for the NBA. If your team's up by 20 in any given game, boom, you're a winner. Just like that. Because Bet365 and me, I don't want you to have to wait around to see if something dramatic is going to happen. And it has happened before. I've talked about a Flyers game where the Flyers were up 3 goals over Pittsburgh not too long ago, and ended up losing that game. Pretty convincingly lost that game as well. And you would have won your bet with Bet365. And on Saturdays, Slam Dunk Saturdays take place. If you place a qualifying parlay bet totaling $20 or more on an NBA game, you'll get $25, up to $25 in bonus bets. And just 7 days left. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to sign up as a new user, use the code PHOY365, deposit $10, and place your first bet for $5 and get $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or you lose. Bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and so much more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And of course, we are getting closer and closer to the first games of the year, and you want to get your tickets with our friends over at Game Time. I've used Game Time for a plethora of different things, from sporting events to concerts to comedy. You're going to get the best deals with Game Time. And the thing that I love most about Game Time is the seat locator and the seat view when you go to buy your tickets. And you're not just going to blindly go in, pick a seat that you think looks good in a section. Maybe you're behind home plate, or you're behind one of the baskets in a basketball game, but then you get there and all of a sudden you've got an obstructed view, especially some of the older stadiums. You want to go to Fenway, you want to go to Wrigley, you're going to be dealing with poles just in the middle of the section because that's how they were built. So you can avoid that with the seat view finder on the Game Time app. You're going to get the best deals, and you're going to have the ability to see exactly what your viewpoint is going to be. I did that when my dad and I went down to Baltimore. I found a couple of seats that I like, and I comped the views, and I ended up picking the best seat because, well, it was a warm day the day that we went, and the sun was not in our faces the entire time. We had a great view of not just the stadium, but of Baltimore as well. And it was because we weren't sitting staring at the sun like we would have if we were down the right field line. You can customize your experience for the best viewing opportunity possible. They offer the seat view, as I made mention. They also offer all-in pricing, which is important because they're not going to hit you with hidden fees at the end of your transaction. They also offer you the lowest price guarantee. Game Time will give you the lowest price guarantee or credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Welcome back to the PHOI Phillies podcast, brought to you by Bet365, where it's never ordinary at Bet365. Wanted to say hello to some of our friends in the chat. Mopar, welcome back. Great to see you as well. Chris Miller, welcome to the chat. Ryan, welcome as well. Player One and the Mad Cats, welcome to you. Thank you to everybody who's checked out the podcast. We are excited to bring you the latest coverage as we are just 3 days away from opening day. We will be down there on opening day with our friends at Philly Sports Trips, heading down to Washington, taking a bus trip down. You get the bus, you get the seat, you get the tailgate before, and it's all included in your price. So I'm going to be hanging out with our friends over at Philly Sports Trips. And then, of course, you can catch our tailgate on Monday for the home opener as we pair with our friends over at Cavs Catering. You're getting unbelievable food, including the filet mignon sliders, which I probably had 10 of them when I was at our tailgate last summer. It includes your ticket. And of course, all you can eat food and beverage. So hang out. There you go. You can hang out with us at 700 Patterson Ave. Beginning at 11 a.m. Game's not till 3. So you have 4 hours of tailgate festivities to enjoy the time with me, with our friends at PHOI, and of course, our friends over at Cavs Catering. All right, let's get to the other move that the Phillies made recently as they have kind of started to put their 26-man roster together. The Phillies claimed relief pitcher. He has started in the past, but I think he's going to be obviously in the bullpen for this team. Claimed Carlos Hernandez from the Kansas City Royals. It looks to me like he'll be the last piece of the bullpen for the time being. What does Carlos Hernandez bring to the table? Velocity. A lot of it. 98 on average, has hit 100 multiple times in his career. He was DFA'd by the Royals just a couple of days ago. He's made 150 career appearances, including 25 starts. He's 7-9 with a sub-5 ERA, a 4.95 ERA over 256 innings. What does he do well? As I said, he throws hard. 226 strikeouts over 256 innings, so just shy of a strikeout per inning pitched. What does he not do well? Command. His walks are a problem. 125 walks over those 256 innings pitched. It's why he has a 1.447 whip. He's also given up 246 hits, So he's given up over 370 base runners in 256 innings. Let's call it for what it is. There's a reason the Kansas City Royals DFA'd this guy. There's also a reason that when he was a starter, he was 1-10. This, though, feels like a Dave Dombrowski, Caleb Cotham acquisition. Stuff. That's what they care about. They care about velo. They care about movement. They care about downward movement specifically, which I think his curveball probably qualifies as the downward movement. And they think that this could be a reclamation project. As I said, he averaged 98 on the gun last year. He has the ability to hit 100. He used his fastball 54% of the time last season. He also features 3 other pitches in his 4-pitch arsenal. He throws a slider, a splitter, and a curveball. His slider and curveball usage have kind of flipped over the years. He was more heavy curveball as a secondary pitch. Recently, he's been more slider. Last 2 seasons generated good whiff numbers, but as I said, he's also been way over the mark in terms of walk rates throughout his career. He has an 11.2% walk rate as to kind of comp that to the league average. Major League Baseball average is about 8.4%. So he's almost 3% higher across the league in walk rate than the league average. He's also been barreled over his career at 8.7% when the league average is 7. Gives up some hard contact, does walk a ton of guys. Again, there's a reason that he didn't make the Royals roster this season. Again, numbers, games come into it, but last year posted a 3.3 ERA, probably his best ERA statistical season. I think this is a shot in the dark, right? They're taking a flyer on a guy who throws hard and has decent stuff. He's not going to be a staple of the back end of the bullpen. I kind of liken this move to the Phillies signing Jose Ruiz last year. Now, I like Ruiz more than I like Hernandez. I think Ruiz has better command. I think Ruiz has stuff that plays a little bit better. But Ruiz rewarded the Phillies when the expectations for him last year were pretty much 0. He was going to be mop-up duty. He was going to be a 5th, 6th inning guy. But he was really successful in his 6th inning role. He was the guy that when a starter didn't get deep into the game, Rob Thompson was able to call upon, and he had a much better year than what I could have anticipated. I'm not expecting the same thing from Hernandez, but I am expecting him to kind of play mop-up role a little bit as Taijuan Walker is going to slide into the starting rotation. Joe Ross will be the multi-inning guy, but this guy can also throw multiple innings if necessary. As I said, he was a starter in the past. But I think the thing that the Phillies like about him is he's got 2 more years of arbitration. He doesn't become an unrestricted free agent until 2027. It's low risk, potentially higher reward for this bullpen for a team that was, flush up against the luxury tax threshold that was going to start causing problems for their draft picks. If he doesn't work out, they'll just release him. And it'll be, no harm, no foul type of situation. Here's what I like about Hernandez, other than the fastball that plays, right? Because the fastball was really quite good when he hits his spots. I like his curveball as well. As I said, he's used the slider more than the curveball in recent years, but I would like for him to go back to more curveball heavy as a secondary pitch, because the slider got hit around last year a little bit to a 304 mark. The curveball, meanwhile, he got 47% whiff rate on it last year, and opponents hit 133. Now, that 304 mark on the slider may be a little bit deceiving because the expected batting average on it was 249, so maybe he ran into some bad luck on that pitch a little bit. But I personally would use the curveball a little bit more frequently than I would the slider. Now, he uses the slider primarily against righties, and he uses the curveball primarily against lefties. If he faces more righties, he's going to use the slider more frequently. It's just what he's come to do over his career. But I would maybe sprinkle in that curveball a little bit more against righties than he did last year, because I think it's probably his second best pitch. He uses the splitter a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked if the splitter usage goes up. It's just what Caleb Cotham likes. If you look across the Phillies bullpen and you look across the Phillies rotation, a lot of guys have either adapted a sweeper or a splitter because Caleb Cotham and this pitching staff and this pitching coaching staff likes downward movement and it likes hard horizontal movement. So you either need the hard sweeper or you need something with downward movement. Could it be the curveball? Certainly could, but he could also maybe think about using the splitter a little bit more as well. As I said, this feels kind of like a classic Dave Dombrowski, Caleb Cotham reclamation project type thing. I'm not expecting much from this guy, but he's going to start the year in the Phillies bullpen because he's out of options as well. So it looks to me like he'll be the last righty out of the bullpen, at least until Ranger Suarez returns, and then we'll see what happens with Taijuan Walker sliding back into the bullpen. But for now, it looks like the last righty in the bullpen is going to be Carlos Hernandez. All right, let's get quickly, before we get out of here for the afternoon, let's get to our final bold prediction of the year. We've been giving out one bold prediction every Monday at the end of the show per division. We are now on the final week of the offseason of spring training, and it hits home because I held on to the National League East for last on purpose. Maybe build up a little bit of dramatic effect or whatever the case may be. The National League East bold prediction, I could go super bold and say I don't think the Mets make the playoffs, but I do think they're going to make the playoffs. I could go super bold and say that I think the Braves could win the World Series because I think they certainly could. I'm not going to go that bold either, but I am going to go to Atlanta for my bold prediction. Atlanta lost Max Fried this offseason to free agency. The Yankees signed him to a massive deal. Chris Sale is coming off his Triple Crown and Cy Young season. Reynaldo Lopez was awesome in his role with the Braves in their rotation. Spencer Strider returns. This is a Braves rotation that I think is going to be set up to be pretty good. But the guy that I'm most bullish on in the Braves rotation for this upcoming season is Spencer Schwellenbach. I think that this is the year that Schwellenbach takes a big leap into being a household name. Last year, he was 8-7 with a 3.37 ERA, and he struck out 127 over 123 innings pitched, posted just north of a 1 whip, and was much, much better as the season progressed. Had a couple of rough outings early in the season, and then really buckled down and had an excellent month of August. I believe it was August. It was an excellent month of August. 5 strikeouts per walk in the month of August. Was also really good in the month of July as well, and then had a good September as well. So in June, he posted a 5.7 ERA over 5 starts. He made 15 starts from July to September and into the postseason. Posted a 2.0 in July, a 3.0 in August, and a 2.4 in September and into October. I think Spencer Schwellenbach is just scratching the surface of what he could be as an every 5th day Major League starter. I'm really bullish on Schwellenbach this upcoming season. I think he could be the difference maker in the Braves rotation because I think we know what Sale is. We know what Lopez is. Be interesting to see how Strider bounces back after not pitching last year. Schwellenbach could be a hidden ace for this team. I'm very bullish on the guy, and I think that not only do I believe that he is going to have a breakout year, I think Spencer Schwellenbach is primed to potentially be an all-star this year, and I think he finishes in the top 5 in Cy Young voting this upcoming season. And that's my bold prediction for the National League East. Mopar says really quickly, before you guys sign off, are we here same time every day? We are here Monday and Friday live at 1 o'clock. And then we'll have some recorded smaller bits of content for you on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Next week, though, we'll have a little bit of a different schedule as we will go live Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. We'll have an additional live show on Tuesday as well. It'll be a post-opening or post-home opener live show for that matter. So big thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Big thank you to Julia for producing. We got to get out of here because the Eagles are coming up at 2, and I know Julia has to run over to produce that show, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. Chris Miller, Ray Schumacher, Mopar, everybody that was in the chat today, I appreciate you as always. We'll be back tomorrow with some small bite-sized pre-recorded videos. We're going to start to dive into our predictions for the season, both National League and American League, World Series, awards and such, as we get you ready for opening day. Is just 3 days away. Zach Wheeler versus Mackenzie Gore. The next time we talk to you live, that game will have happened. We're going to check in from Washington with a beat writer down there. We'll also check in with Jim Salisbury on Friday. So we'll be live back on Friday at 1 o'clock, but Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll have some content for you as well. Stay tuned all day, PHLY. As I said, the Eagles come to you at 2 o'clock, and then the Sixers pre- and post-game show. The Sixers are doing yeoman's work because this season has been the season from hell as a Sixers fan. So big shout out to Kyle and Derek and Devon for their continued coverage. Pre-game at 7:30, post-game at 10:30 here on PHLY. We'll be back live on Friday, and in the meanwhile, we'll have a couple of pre-recorded videos for you Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll check back in with you on Friday right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.